Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'll call into session, open session, this meeting of the AISD Board of Trustees on August 15th at 7:07 p.m. I want to thank everyone for coming out with us this evening. To start this meeting with our opening ceremony, please join Dr. Reich in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now, if you would, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Please silence all cell phones, electronic devices around you to avoid disruptions during the meeting. The first item on our agenda is program and presentation, but we are going to swap that and go to the next item, come back to that, and we're going to go to appointments. See a lot of anticipation in faces. We know how to win friends, don't we? Yeah. So with that, we're going to appointments. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. I would like to recommend the board ratify the individuals discussed in closed session for the principal of Butler Elementary, assistant principal for Adams Elementary, assistant principal for Blanton, assistant principal for Farrell, assistant principal for Miller, assistant principal for Sherrod, assistant principal for Webb, and the appointment of the individuals discussed in closed session for chief academic officer, assistant principal for Bowie High School, assistant principals for Lamar High School, and the assistant principal for Young Junior High.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. At this time, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the appointments made by Dr. Cavazos.
Second.
At this time, we have a motion by Mr. Pompa and a second by Dr. Reich. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 6 trustees present. Mr. Hibbs is in San Francisco this evening on a business trip. 6 trustees present. You have some appointments. Dr. Cavazos, please introduce them.
Thank you, President Hogg. First, I'd like to introduce our new chief academic officer, Ms. Evan Smith. Evan attended West Texas State University and received her Bachelor of Science in West Texas A&M University for her Master's in Education. She's most recently the Executive Director of Secondary Instruction here in Arlington ISD. Previously served as the Deputy Superintendent in Pampa ISD. She's been a principal at a high school, principal at a middle school, curriculum coordinator, an assistant choir director. She's also been a director of band and a math teacher. And she's taught computer skills at the K-8 level. And so, Evan, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say or anyone you'd like to introduce?
President Hogg, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Cavazos, I must say that I'm truly honored to be selected into this position, and absolutely I have some people I would like to introduce. First of all, I want to introduce my wonderful children that God has blessed me with, and I would like to introduce my oldest child, Shelley, my son, Stephen, my youngest daughter, Sarah, and Emily, who is my adopted daughter, and they are here with me today. I would also like to say hi to my wonderful family and special friends who are watching via the internet. And I always wanted to do this. Hey, Mom, how are you? In the room, though, I really want to thank all of my AISD family, who I'm also honored to call my friends. The people that work here at Central Office, all of the staff, including especially our senior staff, are dedicated and wonderful, fabulous campus administrators who work tirelessly every day. Our curriculum and instruction department, who is the brain trust, and I always hear referred to as the heartbeat of our district. To the professionals in the classroom who make it happen every single day for each and every one of our children. And for those wonderful people who are our support, and I'm going to really embarrass Joan Alvey today, who has kept me going and who's been my backbone and kept me organized and taught me much this whole entire year. But what I want to do is say that we are all surrounded by wonderful visionaries here in AISD, and it's a great and exciting time to be part of this district. I want you to know that I'm very committed to our vision of becoming a premier and globally recognized district. And it all stems from the fact that what we're doing is that we have a laser-like focus on what we can do for our children and where we can bring them from here forward. Having the opportunity to serve and work among all the members of our community, our students, our parents, our staff, our community members, our universities and our colleges is going to really propel us into the next phase of what we're doing. And the people that are going to be the beneficiaries are our students. Our students are going to win through this relationship that we're building. So it's not only our students that win, but it's also the community that we serve. So I want to thank you for having the confidence that you've placed in me for this position, and I guarantee you that I will lead and work and commit myself to our vision. Every single day, I will work to meet the needs of our students through relevant, innovative, and rigorous learning experiences. It's truly a blessing to be part of Arlington Independent School family. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the principal of Butler Elementary School, Ms. Stacy Humbles. Stacy attended the University of Iowa and received her Bachelor of Arts in English, and the University of Texas at Arlington to receive her Master's of Education in Ed Leadership. Stacy's most recently the assistant principal at Butler Elementary. She has served as a 7th and 8th grade teacher at Workman Junior High and an 11th grade English teacher in Kemp High School. Stacy, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say, anyone you'd like to introduce?
Yes, sir. Board President, Mr. Hogg, and members of the board, and Superintendent, Dr. Cavazos, I want to thank all of you for this incredible opportunity. Your belief and support of me as the next principal of Butler means a lot. I'd like to say hello to my parents and my in-laws in Iowa, and my brother, who I think told me he's in Boston right now, so he's somewhere, and my brother's family in McKinney. I love you all, and mwah. I'd like to introduce my family, and I'm going to make them stand up. My two amazing children, Jalen and Kalissa. Every step I've taken is for those two right there. My always amazing and supportive husband, Shelby. There is no way I could have gotten to this point without hundreds of people who've helped me along the way. So I'd like to thank Mr. Belisle, my former principal, who I worked for at Workman Junior High. He gave me the freedom to become a leader when I was a teacher. And after many years, he told me that I was his acorn, and I think I understand that now. Of course, Daniel Gallagher, the former principal of Butler, I remember the day that he offered me the job. When he called me on the phone and offered me the job for his assistant principal, he said, "I know you're going to be a principal soon." And I think this is sooner than I had thought, but I'm definitely honored and ready. I also want to thank all of my amazing teachers, the parents, and of course the students of Butler. I'm so fortunate to be a part of this group of outstanding people, and I look forward to our years together. And I'd like to thank Dr. Haubrich and Dr. Wartz, who are somewhere around. Wherever you are, you two put me through the most grueling interview in the history of interviews. But I'm still very much looking forward to working with you. Dr. Cavazos and the board, I want you to know that I believe in your vision for this district, and I believe in Arlington ISD and our future. And Butler has been a leading school, and I plan to continue that and keep us moving forward. Your belief in me as a school leader has impacted me more than you'll ever know, and I intend to continue to do what is best for our kids, our families, and the teachers of this district. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Next, I'd like to introduce the assistant principal for Adams Elementary, Erica Bynum. Erica attended the University of North Texas in Denton and received her Bachelor of Science, and the University of Texas at Arlington to receive her Master of Education in Curriculum and Instruction. She's most recently a reading specialist in Mansfield ISD and has worked as a 3rd grade teacher in Fort Worth ISD. Erica, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say? Anyone you'd like to
Yes.
introduce?
I would like to extend my gratefulness to the school board president, Mr. Hogg, school board members, and Dr. Cavazos. And I would like to introduce my family first, my support system, the love of my life, my mommy, Eunice Baker, my godparents who are always there for me, Alvin and Monica Jones, my best friend and mentor, Andrea Nicole Harper. And my other friend, who I don't know what I would do without her, Miss Amy Cunningham. She's assistant principal at Wood Elementary. I am truly elated to be a part of the Arlington ISD leadership team, as well as the James and Barbara Adams Elementary family. I am looking forward to implementing the components of AISD's strategic plan to help increase teacher quality and to help create lifelong readers, thinkers, and learners. In closing, I would like to give all praises to my Heavenly Father for making this day possible. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you all.
Next, I'd like to introduce the assistant principal from Blanton Elementary School, Mr. Keith Boyd. Keith attended Sam Houston State University and received his Bachelor of Arts in Music, and Concordia University to receive his Master of Education in Administration. Most recently, a 5th grade teacher at Piercy Elementary School, has been a 6th grade teacher at Beckham, a 6th grade teacher at Johns, and a 4th grade teacher at Johns as well. Keith, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say, or anyone you'd like to introduce?
Thank you. I'd first like to thank Mr. Hogg and the entire school board. I'd also like to thank you, Dr. Cavazos, for this amazing opportunity. I would also like to thank my new family at Blanton Elementary under the leadership of Mr. Joshua Leonard. I would like to say a special thank you to some amazing people who have mentored me along the way, Dr. Haubrick, Ms. Turnipseed, and Mr. Egner. That's my man. And I would like to acknowledge the inspiration of my life, my mother, who is here visiting all the way from Houston, Texas. If you could stand. You know, no matter how old I grow, she always considers me her baby boy. So I am truly happy that she's here to share this opportunity with me. And lastly, I would just like to say that I am indeed honored to have this opportunity, and I look forward to serving the students, the families, faculty, and staff at Blanton Elementary. Again, thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the assistant principal of Farrell Elementary, Ms. Dana Ware. Dana attended Texas Women's University and received her Bachelor of Science, and the University of Texas at Arlington to receive her Master of Education in Ed Leadership. Most recently, an assessment and data analyst for Fort Worth ISD, has been a primary and intermediate classroom teacher in Fort Worth, has taught in Phoenix, Arizona, and in Fort Worth ISD also as a 2nd grade teacher. So Dana, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say, anyone you'd like to introduce?
Yes, good evening. Thank you, President Hogg, members of the school board, Dr. Cavazos. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to serve as an assistant principal in the Arlington ISD. I look forward to the challenge and the opportunity to work with the amazing teachers and staff at Farrell Elementary. I'd like to thank my husband for his amazing, he's in the back, for his amazing support through this process. I'd like to also thank the Farrell Elementary principal, Mr. Glenn Brunk, and his leadership team for for believing in me and providing me the opportunity to serve them, to serve the school and serve the community. And I know that I am going to a great place that has tremendous leadership. I am excited to be a member of the Farrell Elementary family, and I know we're going to do great things at Farrell Elementary this year. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the assistant principal at Miller Elementary School, Ms. Andrea Peck. Andrea attended Morgan State University and obtained her Bachelor of Science in Social Work, University of North Texas in Dallas, and obtained her Master of Education in Ed Administration. Most recently, a special education teacher and coach at Workman Junior High School, and has worked in Maryland as well. And so, Andrea, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say? Anyone you'd like to introduce?
Thank you. Good evening to Board President Hogg, school board members, Dr. Cavazos, and administrative staff. I am humbled and overjoyed in becoming the assistant principal of Miller Elementary. I would first like to give thanks and honor to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who is the head of my life. I want to also start my thank yous by thanking my former principal, Mr. Story. Mr. Story is a true leader, and he mentored me through this process and helped me just to transition into this position seamlessly. To my Workman staff, students, I just love them. I'm going to miss them. I cherish the time I spent with them for 13 years, but I just encourage them to keep pressing forward and moving to the point of excellency. I also want to thank what I finally called my crew, my support team, my mentors, my everything, Tiffany Jackson, Jeannie Moldrew, Joy Walker, Crystal Lyons, Consuela Thompson, Dr. Malcolm Turner, and Angela Hernandez. Those people are really people who stood behind me and just pushed me when I wanted to just stop. A special thank you to the woman who I pray is watching right now, my mom, who she's molded me into the woman you see before you right now, Ruth Johnson. And to my cousins and everybody watching, I pray, God, that you're watching right now. I will be so embarrassed if you're not, but thank you. I love you all. My only regret is that my father and grandmother are not here to see this, but I know they're watching me from heaven right now. To Miss Jeannie Curtis, thank you for your support and the opportunity to allow me to serve in this leadership capacity. Truly appreciate it. And to Miss Terry Torbain, did I say that right? The assistant principal at Miller, and I'm just so proud to be there. I'm so excited to be on the Miller Maverick staff. I'm just truly honored. I'm excited. They have welcomed me with open arms, and I'm just loving it. Last but not least, I need to introduce my family. First, I want to start with my beautiful twins. Please stand. My son, Armani, and my daughter, Imani. I just feel blessed that God allowed me to be their mom. To my husband, my everything. I don't even have words to describe what this man is for me, but he is my best friend, my supporter, just everything. He has really held my hand through this journey, and I just thank God for him every day. But in closing, once again, I give all praises to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for loving and guiding me to this blessing. Thank you again, and may each of you be richly blessed. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the assistant principal of Sherrod Elementary School, Ms. Sherry Moore. Sherry attended University of North Texas in Denton, obtained her Bachelor of Science, attended the University of North Texas in Denton to obtain her Master of Education in Administration, most recently an assistant principal in Louisville ISD, and has served as an assistant principal at Arlington ISD in the past and a language arts instructional specialist as well. Sherry, congratulations, and anyone you'd like to introduce?
Thank you very much. First of all, I just wanted to say a big thank you to Dr. Cavazos and Mr. Hogg and the board for bringing me here today. I also want to say a big thank you to, I want to say Mr. Varnell, but it's Dr. Varnell now. Where is he? There he is. So he is the one that spearheaded this journey back. I am forever grateful to be back in Arlington 13 years later. So I also want to say thank you to Dr. Hobrick for inviting me to come back second round, and just truly, truly grateful. So thank you. I also want to thank my husband. He is not here right now. He currently serves on the Arlington PD SWAT team. However, he has not been called to duty tonight, but he's been called to husband duty. And we have 2 children who have practices that started up tonight, and so he cannot be here. But I wanted to say just a very loving thank you to him. He is the one that has encouraged me and been my rock and has really pushed me to come back to Arlington. And so I'm very, very thankful to him. I have an 11-year-old son who goes on 5, depending on what day you ask. And I have a 13-year-old daughter who is going on 21. I just wanted to say thank you. I am so looking forward to coming back to Sherrod. I was at Sherrod as a teacher in 1999-2000, and to be able to come back as an administrator and just really continue to work alongside the teachers to really implement the vision of AISD is an honor. I am extremely excited to work next to Dr. Varnell and ensuring that the students feel safe to take risk in the classroom and to ensure that they truly do have a nurturing, flexible, and innovative learning experience. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the journey that this presents. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the Assistant Principal of Webb Elementary School, Suhey Villarreal. Suhey attended the University of Texas in Dallas and obtained her Bachelor of Science in Speech Language Pathology, and attended Dallas Baptist University and obtained her Master of Education in Ed Leadership. Most recently, a bilingual education teacher at Johns Elementary, has been a bilingual teacher in Grand Prairie as well. Suhey, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
Yes, thank you so much. Good evening to Board President Hogg, board members, Dr. Cavazos, administration that's here, staff, faculty, everyone that's here today. I'm just so humbled. I just first like to thank God for blessing me with this privilege. It's an honor for opening this door at this point in my life. I want to thank all of you for just giving me the opportunity to stand here before you today and have this honor and privilege. Thank you, Ms. Rogers, she's somewhere here. Thank you so much for believing me, helping me grow last year, pushing me to be the person that I am today and get that administrative experience that I so much needed. Thank you so much, Mr. Fowler, Ms. Kirby, my Jones family for their support. Special thanks to my teammates in 4th grade and my team leader, Ms. Ledesma. I love them dearly. It was a great year. I had so much fun at Jones. Thank you, Ms. Liker, Dr. Hubrick, for believing in me and extending this great opportunity to my Webb family. I feel like I've been there. They received me with open arms, and I am so happy to be there. And last but not least, you save the best for last, that's what they say. I want to thank my pastors, Daniel and Holly Drost, and to my church family. Their prayers have gotten me through grad school and to be here today. To all my friends that have been there along the way, they know who you are. If you're watching, you know who you are. To my parents, they came to this country as immigrants, and they believe in the value of an education. They knew that this is what I needed to pursue so I can have this opportunity, and now I have this to share with my wonderful children. I'm going to make you stand up. Sergio, my son Elias, my daughter Elisa, she's hiding somewhere there, and to my husband and my best friend Israel, I love you so much, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. You guys are awesome. You guys are amazing. I'm humbled and I'm honored, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you. God bless you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the Assistant Principal of Bowie High School, Mr. Rini Lizardo. Rini attended Southwestern Adventist University and obtained his Bachelor of Science in Communications and his Master of Education in Ed Leadership. Most recently, the Assistant Principal at Bailey Junior High School, has been an English lead ESL teacher at Bowles, has taught in Cleburne ISD, and has also taught in South Korea. Rini, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, President Hogg, board members, Superintendent Dr. Cavazos. Thank you so much for this appointment. I promise I won't let you down. First off, I want to thank God for everything he's done for me, my wife and my son for all the support they've shown, my mom who's at home taking care of my son, thank you, and my brother who's in California. I especially want to thank my father. He's here with me. He's in the back. I won't make him stand, but I'll make him wave. My father moved from Dominican Republic to this country with $100 in his pocket, and he always taught us that education was the most important thing. And then he proved it by getting his PhD. He's a professor at A&M Commerce. And I thank him so much for his inspiration. Professionally, I want to thank my Bailey family, and they are a family. Ms. Benavidez, Ms. Laney, Ms. Peterman, and Ms. Bouchel. I was definitely the little brother of the group. But they raised me well, and I feel like my Bailey family raised me to be ready for Bowie. So I definitely want to thank, first off, Ms. Wilmoth for also a grueling interview, but really opening my eyes and preparing me for this spot. And of course, Mr. Manley and the administrative team at Bowie for letting me come into their school. I also want to let them know that I'm going to hit the ground running. Mr. Cavazos told me today to own it, and I plan to do that and work as hard as possible to help that school with their vision and this district with their strategic plan. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to introduce the Assistant Principal of Lamar High School, Mr. Eric Carter. Eric attended South Carolina State University and received his Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, UT Arlington to receive his Master of Education in Ed Leadership, has been an Assistant Principal in Dallas ISD, has been an Assistant Principal Athletic Director in Manor ISD, has been a health teacher in Duncanville, has worked in Houston ISD, and Beaumont ISD as well. Eric, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
First and foremost, I'd like to give honor to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Secondly, to President Hodge and the rest of the school board members, and Dr. Cavazos, and Dr. Harmon, who without his recommendation, I wouldn't be standing here today. I am really excited, and you always know you come into a good place when you see so many people excited about coming to a place. And to hear the cheers and the people so supportive, and to see some of my former classmates from the UT Arlington graduate program is just really exciting. One of the questions that I heard a colleague ask, he said, you know, it's a lot of changes going on in Dallas ISD with cuts and things. I said, no, I wasn't cut. I'm not here by desperation or any other reason. I'm here exactly because it's a great school district, and this is one of the premier school districts in the state, and I look forward to the privilege and the responsibility of serving the community and the students of Arlington ISD. I'll say thank you to my mom, who's hopefully watching. If not, I will tell her too. And all my family and friends have been supportive in all my travels, and I just look forward to the opportunity. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the Assistant Principal for Lamar High School, Ms. Rosa Newberry. Rosa attended University of Texas at Arlington and received her Bachelor of Arts in Communication, attended UT Arlington for her Master of Education in Leadership. Most recently, the Assistant Principal at Carter Junior High School, has taught 7th grade math at Shackelford Junior High School, and 7th grade English as a second language, ESL, at Shackelford as well. Rosa, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
President Hogg, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos, it is with honor and pleasure that I humbly accept the responsibilities, obligations, and role of the assistant principal. I pledge to serve the students, the teachers, the parents, and the community of Lamar. It is an honor to serve Dr. Harmon as we journey together to provide relevant, innovative, and rigorous learning experiences for all Vikings. Tonight, I would like to thank Mr. Nix for providing me with guidance and wisdom. I would also like to thank Mr. Meeks for being the best assistant principal that I could have been partnered with, Ms. Acosta for her continuous support and mentoring, and Dr. Harmon, the interview committee, and Ms. Wilmoth for selecting me. Here with me tonight is my loving and supporting husband, Jay, who's in the back, and my father, Jose, who's here with me tonight, who instilled in me the qualities that make me who I am today. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the Assistant Principal for Young Junior High School, Mr. Billy Linson. Billy attended Lyon College University and obtained his Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, Lamar University to obtain his Master of Education in Ed Administration. Most recently, a social studies teacher and coach at Bowie High School, has taught history and coached in Cedar Hill, and has taught geography in Greenville ISD. Billy, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
Thank you. Good evening to Mr. Hogg, Dr. Cavazos, and the rest of the school board. I have to lean a little bit because I'm a little bit taller, I think, than the rest of the applicants. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Kelly Hastings, the principal at Young Junior High, for the opportunity that she's given me to service the Arlington students in the Arlington community. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. I'd also like to thank Ms. Michelle Wilmeth-Sonato for bringing me and my wife, I'd like to introduce my wife, to Kyra. She's the drill team director, dance teacher, the best one in the district. Not just the district. I'll go further and say the state, not just the district.
And you could go with country, sir.
Country, why not? I'm in there, I'm in there. I hope this is on tape. And Ms. Wilmers gave us the opportunity. She hired both of us and gave us the opportunity to come into Arlington ISD, and we're definitely grateful for that and for the support that we received. Also for Mr. Bill Manley, who's been the principal for the latter part of that year as well. I'd also like to introduce my mom. She is currently holding our newborn daughter who turned 2 months today. She was definitely influential in providing rigor for me as a child. So I hope that I can pass on that knowledge to the children that I'm going to be serving, because I definitely got a full share of it in the end. So I'm grateful, thankful for all my friends and people that have supported me, and I can't wait to serve the students. I'm fired up. I can't wait to get started. So thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce our new Director of Communications, Leslie Johnson. Leslie attended UT Austin and received her Bachelor of Science in Public Relations, and UT Arlington and received her Master of Education in Leadership. Leslie is most recently the Coordinator of Communications and has taught journalism and publications and been a UIL academic coordinator in Weatherford ISD. Leslie, congratulations. Anything you'd like to say?
Thank you. Superintendent Cavazos, President Hogg, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to lead the communications effort of this district that I love so much. Throughout my time as a student and an employee here at the district, I've continued to grow and learn, and I look forward to continuing that effort. In fact, I would not be in PR if it wasn't for my yearbook advisor at Martin, Robbie Griffin. I look forward to expanding our communication efforts and spreading all the great news of the events happening in the school district and our transformation efforts as we work to become a premier school district and become globally acknowledged. Thank you, and I want to introduce my parents, Patsy and Lanny Johnston. And I just want to thank you again for this opportunity. I look forward to continuing our efforts here in the district.
Thank you. And as the Director of Communications, everyone asked, even if they weren't watching it live on the web, they're always able to be viewed at any time. So the good notes about your wife, we can have those recorded. You can bring those up when you need to, if you know what I'm saying. So, but anyone who didn't see it can always see it on the World Wide Web at any time on there. So as is our custom, if all the appointees would please follow Mr. Hill, and we are going around the side again. So we would ask everyone besides the appointees to exit out that door so we can start the receiving line. We will take a brief break and be back no later than 8 p.m. Now call this meeting back to order at 8:04 p.m. We will now go back to the agenda item we skipped over, and we will go to program or presentation. First up, we have Managed Performance Empowerments, Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. And at this time, we'd like to present information regarding MPE, our Managed Performance Empowerment. And as you know, the board adopted a policy back in May regarding MPE. And so this is the implementation now of MPE, and Dr. Carter has a presentation regarding that. Dr. Carter.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. President Hogg, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos again. I feel, I'm going to be facing over here on this side. Want to give an update on the implementation of our one of the strategies that we have dealing with the Managed Performance Empowerment model. And what is particularly exciting about this is this represents the first real execution of some things of our strategies in terms of now the campus is going to be doing some things in particular. Yes, we had the Studer process with the surveys and rollout, but this is something that is probably much more directly and maybe at the very heart of what the board had wanted to put into place. And so this is kind of our initial step in that direction. Performance standards, first of all, what were the performance standards that we put together to select the campuses? In particular, what qualified them first? And first of all, with the non-Title I campuses, we decided to go with the 3 indexes. We had proposed some things which were much more relative, and one of the feedback that we got from the principals was overwhelmingly they wanted absolute standards, and separate out the title schools from the non-title. It just was fairer, they felt, to do that. Plus a little bit clear as to what it is that they can say, go back and say, this is why I have been selected or I have not been selected. So these are the 3 indexes. Each of them are well above what the district's performance was, which in turn was well above what the standards were for the targets. So with non-Title I campuses, Index 1, that's student achievement, being set at 80, it's really 80%. With Index 2, that's student progress, and that is set at 44. In Index 3, that is the closing performance gaps, set at 79. For the Title I campuses, a little lower, only fairly doing that, with Index 1 at 72, but having the progress measure be the same. There's absolutely no reason why that particular measure should be lower than in non-title. And then with Index 3, closing performance gaps set at 73. The last basic metric is the overall average on the employee engagement and the parent satisfaction surveys being at 3.5. So we don't, that represents that there's not maybe some other organizational issues that might be going on, which are direct link with leadership. So having 3.5 was one of the qualifiers. There were some additional standards, and these were more on the side of what could bump you out, that there might be some problems that are sufficiently high enough that would bump you out of it. So one of the standards is satisfactory administration of the campus budget and the activity fund. So the finance department reviewed that for the qualified campuses, as did our internal auditor. And so all of these that qualified, they escaped being drummed out. So that was very good to hear. Also compliance with special education requirements. No, nobody is at 100% with that, and it's always striving for 100%, but it's more looking at patterns that might represent some problems in this area. None of these particular campuses that qualified were at some level, some pattern level that would have disqualified them. Continuity of campus leadership. It's mostly about the leadership of the campus, but there are 3 schools that actually met the criteria, but they have a change of leadership. And so it really is about the leadership anyhow, so in dealing with the autonomies, if there was a change, then they were automatically dropped. What are the autonomies themselves? First, flexibility on whom to hire and/or convert an FTE to discretionary budget. Very big one. That is the stipulation there is vacant FTE. It's not about removing someone, from a position in order to get some funds for flexibility. But with a vacant FTE, they could say instead, you know what, talk with my folks and everything, and we really think that something that would be much more efficient, much more effective is to not have this particular FTE filled, have the money and put it in a place that, or in an area that we think will give more bang for the buck. Another autonomy, principal discretion regarding the 12-hour professional development requirement of teachers. The district usually has 6 hours of required PD, and then 6 hours, it's kind of the principal's review of it and indicating that, okay, this will be all right. This gives them full autonomy to just say, 12 hours, teachers, it's whatever you want. The performance level is such that they could even go to the point where they have such discretion, the teachers themselves, that it doesn't have to be reviewed. That's up to the principal as to whether or not he or she is going to review whatever the professional development requests are. The principal discretion regarding curriculum assessment participation. This is one of those things where it's much better for the big bad wolf to say you're going to have to do it. But this is the discretion that is given to the principals that they don't have to, or they're going to participate, but it's on their time frame. It's not going to be the required particular days or something that's on the testing schedule. So they're at full liberty as to their level of participation with curriculum assessments. The principal is going to be able to give 50% weight to evaluation of individuals who are usually evaluated by outside. They're serving on the campus, and the principal doesn't really have an official participation in designating how much weight is given in that evaluation. This one actually says, with cafeteria staff, with custodial staff, I'm going to give 50% of the evaluation weight for that person's total appraisal. No limit on percentage for rollover funds. That really translates more into they don't have to submit a waiver for it, and they get the entire rollover funds. And then lastly, one additional autonomy. This is to unleash creativity. One additional autonomy negotiated with their area superintendent. But some people were asking, well, what could that be? Well, we came up with some examples, but they weren't all that great, and it's just called, as you go through this and your thought processes are really going around this whole thing about what do I need as an autonomy, they might come up with things that are pretty creative, but it's to be negotiated with the area superintendents. Everything, of course, is under the guidelines of the law. You can't do anything that's going to break the law or anything like that. But we were kind of excited about this additional autonomy for the negotiate with the area superintendents and see what they come up with. The duration. It is mostly about a 2-year, beginning right now, 2013, to June 2015, and that is because of the budget cycle things. And as they go through 2 budget cycles, they should have, remember with the staffing especially, they might say, with the staffing, I don't want this, and that may have an implication about going into the 3rd year, actually, because of the budget cycle. But that's what the duration is for the carrying out the autonomies. But they can be removed. The autonomies can be removed. And here's what could remove those autonomies. Significant violations of board policies, significant drop in any state accountability index, a break in the continuity of leadership. The principal is leaving. Okay, again, MP is about the leadership. And a decrease in leadership readiness to sustain autonomy. That, of course, would be heavy participation and input, determination, actually, by the area superintendents. The campuses actually meeting the criteria, all the criteria, and the drum rolls, please. And we have some that are here, and please all stand, because I am personally very proud of them. This is quite an accomplishment, and just let's see all of you. From Bailey, hello there, Tiffany. From Ferguson, Ben. Owsley Junior High, Laura Thurston. Shackelford Junior High, Andy. Ashworth Elementary, Rhonda. Blanton Elementary, Josh. Bryant Elementary, Randy. Farrell Elementary. Key Elementary, Tiffany. And Piercy Elementary, Nicole. Thank you very much. And that's the presentation on MPE.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. This time we'll take questions from trustees. Dr. Reich.
I don't really have a question. I just have more of a comment, a couple of comments. I'm so happy that we're here. Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Thank you, Dr. Carter, and your team putting these matrices together to define who are our first campus CEOs, essentially. Congratulations to all of you. It's a distinct honor. It really, really is, with responsibility. As you all know, you've earned it. We started looking at MPE and this whole idea of campus CEO 3 years ago?
2, 3, yeah.
And it's so gratifying to see we're hitting the ground and we're running with this. You're all guinea pigs as well, as you know.
They know it.
It's the very first time, but I have no doubt that the way we're going about it and what you all have done and what you'll show will be an absolute standard that any other organization in the state or the nation that are trying and looking and observing what MPE is and trying to transition to that will be the benchmark. That's an absolute. I just know it. I'm so pleased that we're here. This is just a great day for us as a district. I really appreciate all the work that you guys have put into this in setting the standards, what they are, setting the thresholds, the metrics behind everything. Data-driven, that's my favorite word. Just love it. I guess I have one question. I agree with the continuity. If they happen to create something that is just making their campus continue to soar because of the autonomies that they have, will that particular program have to be nixed if they do leave and go somewhere else? Or have we not probably broached that subject yet?
That is not only a good question, it's a creative question. Because, no, we haven't thought about that. But that would be something, that's just like with program evaluation, and those things that should go and those things that should be sustained.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's going to be the superintendent's cabinet that might consider those things.
Okay.
And, you know.
Not that we're suggesting any of you go anywhere anytime soon. Please. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very, very much. This is great.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Mr. Pompa.
Thank you, President Barron. I had the opportunity to be in the building. Sorry, thank you, President Hogg. I'm excited. Had the opportunity to be in the building when you guys were brought in, kind of not really knowing what you were brought in for. And you had that look in your face like, I don't know if this is a good thing or it's a bad thing, especially when Dr. Cavazos and I walked in the room. Are y'all excited about this now? Yes, sir. Okay, well, as Dr. Rice said, this is something that was brought to us a couple of years ago. We took it, we molded it to make it our own, to make it make sense for our district and what we're trying to accomplish. And again, congratulations to our superintendent, Dr. Cavazos, and Dr. Carter for putting this program together. And 2 years sounds like it was a long time ago, but we know that in our education world, in a district with 65,000 students, things move a little bit slower, but I think we're doing it right. I think we built the capacity to be able to do it. We have the scores in place from our testing. And I really believe that this is a great first step in accelerating the improvement of this district. We're doing a lot of things that are setting foundational pieces, our assessments, our curriculum assessments, facilities assessments, all those things they're going to take a little bit longer to bear fruit of the work that we're doing, but this is something that can, especially at your campuses, can really accelerate that improvement that we're looking for, moving us to being I like to say being the premier school district. So congratulations to all of you, well-deserved. Obviously, you guys have done a lot of good things in your campuses. We hope that you continue those things and expect that you will, so congratulations again, all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Pompa. And you're right, this was a discussion that we were all kind of, probably the same way y'all heard about MP the first time. I think we felt the same way. We heard about it, sounded like a good concept, but said, let's really dive into it. And that's when we started first looking at this. And it took multiple training sessions for the board, for all of us to say, yep, this is the model we want to go to and reward our schools and our principals and give you those autonomies. Dr. Reich, my question was right along the same lines you have, and I guess I'd go to Dr. Carter. You know, if we have a school that's doing really well and a principal moves and they then have a new position, something like that, is there discretion for the superintendent to make those keep those autonomies in place? Because then you're almost penalizing the campus for that discretion. And on the same side, is there discretion of, even though these scores are right, can the superintendent then say, yeah, we're not going to grant these autonomies? I don't want us to be locked in. I do think there can be, it's preparing for the instances that we haven't thought of and no one else has thought of, still allowing the superintendent to have those at his discretion at certain times.
I would think there's always at the discretion of the superintendent.
Okay.
Including, even the proviso about, all these things were, I don't know about board policy, but I mean, all the other things that, except as the superintendent says, no, these will not exclude any of the campuses that, especially in place, and things are working.
Right.
I'm sure that's just wisdom. And it's like anything with the, like job description, it's all this whole listing, but also any other thing that might, come up that you have to do. It's the same thing here. In this case, the discretion of the superintendent on anything to sustain effectiveness.
Perfect. That's all I want. I just want to make sure we did still have that discretion for the superintendent to reward and give those extra autonomies or anything of that. Also on the same side, if there is some case we haven't thought of, you need to be able to pull some of those autonomies.
And we'll be sure to have that in our kind of the working document.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you, and congratulations on putting this together. We're excited about it. Mr. Pompa.
Wanted to say one more thing, President Hogg. I really want to commend our administration, Dr. Cavazos, and the rest of the administration, because I think it takes a very strong leader to be able to be willing to give away some of your authority. And I commend you for that, because I think you know that you're putting together the kind of team where you feel confident that you can give them those autonomies and they're still going to make great decisions and hopefully even better decisions, because you're closer to the students and you know better than we know what you need on your campus, what needs to occur to deliver the kind of high expectations that we have placed on you. So I just really wanted to thank you for that, for taking that bold step and brave step of letting go of some of your authority and control. And I know, as a CEO myself, I know that that's not an easy thing to do. So again, thank you and congratulations for that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Pompa, and a special congratulations to the schools that may have not been rated as high as they should have in the past, and now they've reached this. They know who they are, and it is an outstanding recognition, and we are very proud of how that recognition came about. Thank you, Dr. Carter, and now we'll turn it over to item B, final accountability results. I'll throw it to Dr. Cavazos, and I think I know where it's going to be thrown.
To Dr. Carter.
Okay. A very brief review of the state accountability results for 2013. Dr. Cavazos had run by on the state of the district, and so just like I said, it's going to be ever so brief. You recall this is the basic framework of the accountability system of the state. You had the 4 indexes: student achievement, index 1, index 2, student progress, index 3, closing performance gaps, and index 4, the post-secondary readiness. Index 1, basically what student achievement is just percent of all tests passed. Just a straight up, here are all the tests, how many of them were passed. So it's not students, it's really tests. Index 2, student progress, it's a combination of year-to-year student score gains for all student groups. So it's basically weighted based on the number of students and, of course, meeting certain minimum group size. Index 3, closing performance gaps, is also a combination of student achievement for economically disadvantaged and then for last year's 2 lowest performing ethnic groups. And it's just the ethnic groups. The ELL and the special ed are not part of this particular one. And Index 4, this year for the post-secondary readiness, it's 4-year or 5-year graduation rates. Next year they add percentages on the advanced levels, and that'll be all school. A snapshot of the accountability sheet itself, rating for the district. You see on the upper left that the met standards on all 4 indexes, did not meet standard on none. And then you have the chart there that shows the percent or the index level for the district. And you can't see it very well, but like with the 75 in index 1, but the target was 50. For the index 2, the district got 34. The target was 21 for a district. With the closing performance gaps, 72, and the target was 55. And then with the index 4, the target is 75, and we got an 82. Index 2 has different targets based on the school level. Remember, that's the student progress target. The high schools had to get only 17, junior high 29, elementary school 30, but the districts had to get 21. The campus results for Index 1, all campuses met standard. With Index 2, all campuses met standard. With Index 3, 65 of the 68 met standard. 3 campuses obtained a rating of improvement required. In Index 4, all high school campuses met standard. There's another segment on that summary sheet that just says the performance index summary. It doesn't really, it just says how many points were earned with maximum points. That's how you got the index score for each of the indexes. And on the lower right, the system safeguards. It gives the actual numbers. I was assured that this slide would look much better than that, but okay. This doesn't pertain to the rating itself, but what it means, you go to this, remember this chart that we went over about the accountability? These are the standards that you have to get as part of the system safeguard for all of these groups with the performance areas, the participation areas. Those were the standards. So if you did not meet those standards, it just told you what percent that you did meet it. The parts that you did not meet, like I said, it is not part of the rating itself, but the campuses or the district, it must be part of the improvement plan. Okay, it has to be addressed. It doesn't have to be a goal, it just has to be addressed in the improvement plan. So our district improvement plan and the campuses themselves, they will address all those areas where they fell below those particular safeguard targets. We had the distinction designation. The districts don't get distinctions on, at least for now, only the campuses. So this is an example of one of the campuses that had all 3 distinctions. And the distinctions are rather complicated. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of them, but the general areas: reading, ELA, mathematics, and student progress. And basically, it's, are you in the top 10 of your 40 campuses that are most like you? That's what defines whether or not you attain certain things. But that's for each one of the areas that are listed in this chart. It's these particular areas, and you'll notice that it's all dealing with the highest levels. It's the advanced levels, it's the exceeding the gains, for instance, all those things. Then you have to have a certain percent. And you have to, with those comparisons in your 40, you have to be in the top 10 a certain percent of times. That's what gives you the designation. So those percentages for high school, basically it's a third. A third of those comparisons, you got to get, you have to have it in order to get a designation. With the junior highs, you have to be, it's 50% of the time. And with elementary, 50%. And like I said, district, it doesn't apply. So those that got a designation, distinction 3 out of 3, that means, like with the elementary, they had to be in 50% of those each time at least in order to get that designation. There are many that had 1, that they fell below the 50%. They got in the top 10 of a particular category, but it wasn't enough times that they did that to get the designation, okay? So that's how complicated that can be when it comes to that. At the same time, as a researcher, this is the part I like the most, because comparison with schools that are most like you throughout the state, you're controlling for a lot of other variables, other factors that can, you're trying to be able to explain some things. So this is the cleaner comparison that is made. So I particularly like the whole thing of the distinctions. As far as number of distinctions, we had 3 high schools out of the 6 getting, they all got 1, 3. Junior high, we had 2 that got 1 distinction, 4 that got 2 distinctions, but half, 6 out of 12, got all 3 distinctions. So 12 out of 12 junior highs got a distinction. With elementary, 16 elementaries got 1 distinction, 7 got 2, and 1, who is with us here tonight, 1 got 3 distinctions across the board. So 24, just a little. Come on, take a bite. So just under half got distinctions in the elementary ranks. And that concludes my presentation on the state accountability results.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. At this time, we'll take any questions from board members. Dr. Rush.
Clear as mud.
Yeah.
Very, very complex. My only question is, as far as availability of data, would it be the TEA's website that would have the information on what they're using for the like campuses around the state that anybody in the community can look at, as far as what their measures are, or where would we go to look at
the
those
description, it's in various places. There's an FAQ that will address that on the TEA website, and a lot of times it'll address a lot of the different questions that people have. When it comes to the whole accountability, there's pieces dealing with the student progress, there's other pieces dealing with basic calculation. It's not all like one document, except the accountability manual. The accountability manual has all these chapters and
like the IRS
great
code.
bedtime reading. All those chapters, and then all these appendices. So I don't know. It seems like there could be one sort of thing. Even a thing that says something so simple as what changes they made. You might remember that Index 2 was going to be about the lowest fifth percentile. That was abandoned. I mean, they have something that's much more absolute. So we'll be able to calculate those things next year, not wait for the mid-July for the state to tell us some things. So that'll be helpful.
That's great. Well, yeah, that will be helpful to have that in advance. And congratulations to all the schools that did such a great job in meeting those marks. Do we have any information at this point what the state's plans are as far as the passing standards? Are they going to stay for a few years? Are they going to go up?
The commissioner has made a recommendation, which is a recommendation to himself, that they will, well, he's going to get input. It's out there, he's going to get input, but he makes the decision as to continuing with phase 1, which is keeping the same standard now. Otherwise, it was going to go to phase 2, which are higher standards. Eventually, it's all supposed to go to the final recommended level. We're going on the basis that it's going to be phase 1. If he's recommending it, it's probably going to be phase 1.
Okay.
But we don't know if that's going to eat up the 2 years, eat up 1 year of the 2 years of phase 2, in which case the timeline for the final is going to be still set, or if it kind of postpones all of it. That part we don't know either. The other part we don't know, that even though the passing standard might stay the same, we have no idea about the targets for the index. We don't know if 50 is going to remain to be the target in Index 1, or if that's going to be bumped up to 55. Gosh. We have no idea about that part. I haven't read anything that says that somehow the targets are going to stay for some amount of time. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it doesn't exist somewhere in somebody's mind down there, but it's I just haven't read it. So I mean, in the past, it's always been going up.
Right.
Steadily.
We can assume it's probably going to go up. We don't know when. Therefore, for you and your job, there's absolutely no way for you to do any kind of predictive modeling to see where we are. I mean, we're shooting in the dark. We're just going to keep moving.
Not until next
moving
May, probably. Or June, right when we're generating things, then there'll probably be some statement about the targets.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Ms. Solons.
Thank you. Dr. Carter, thank you for your presentation. We're so thankful for your mastering command of the data, so that we have the fortunate thing just to ask a few questions. But I do have one on the indices. Is there something in one of the three that gives us an indication of the growth of AP students, those who are reaching new heights, or maybe eventually on track to attend elite universities? Is there something that gives us any indication out of those, on those students?
Not on the AP students specifically, just on students generally. See, there's no test for the AP students themselves. There's no EOC that is just for AP, nothing like that. That is something we'll have to get from AP data. The only thing is just as far as high achieving students, they do have they put such an emphasis and some additional weight in the calculation towards the index on those achieving advanced. I mean, that just sort of, you get a lot of time in many places, double weight. So the more the students, that doubles the weight of that percent, for getting to the maximum. And so the accountability does sort of, it's a reward very high achieving. Even the progress measure, the way it is shaped and fashioned, it's the double weight, you can actually get way beyond. We tend to think of the indexes almost like percentages. Well, they're not quite. They're in a sense a weighted percent, a little bit, but not when you have certain things that are double weight with exceeded, the progress. But you could actually get some indexes in student progress that is as much as 150, okay? Because if you had so many that are getting advanced level or exceeding the progress level, and you get double weight on that. It's, you know, it's the same thing with looking at the index 3 with the closing the gap. Same thing. So you could, you know, it's a whole different kind of orientation that we have about what those indexes are. But yeah, a lot of emphasis on the high achieving, the very high achieving.
Well, that's good news. You know, so that, you know, I know in the past we've talked, as we've been in planning meetings and so forth, that when we are looking and setting goals for the district, that we want to make sure that all students reach their maximum potential. So because of that double weight, there would give us some indication in those indices on how the high-performing students are doing as well.
And remember, the distinctions are almost exclusively about the higher performing.
Right.
That's what the rank ordering is.
Right.
It's based on how they do on the advanced level, not on the passing stuff, on the advanced levels. So that's where it, that's why it's a good supplement to the overall thing of passing. That, okay, now here's the picture about how your high performing levels are compared to those comparison the groups.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And since I didn't say so earlier, congratulations to all of you. It's quite an accomplishment. We're proud of you.
Thank you, Ms. Solons. Dr. Carter, probably the best job security in this state is accountability departments right now with, and no one really knows how you do it or how you do. So you can thank the state for.
We just try to do it right.
Thank our legislature for you, and you're doing a great job. So it's a very confusing thing, and the one thing we know is accountability will constantly change.
Oh,
so keep up with it, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
What? Thank you to all the principals.
Thank you all.
We know it's training week. You got a bunch of teachers coming in next week. Most of them are probably already there. Next, we'll come to our agenda, open forum for agenda items. I don't have any cards tonight, so we will go on to the next item, is action items. First up, we have action item A, consider ordinance number 133, setting the 2013 tax rate. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. At this time, Cindy Powell will give a presentation on the tax rate.
Good evening, President Hogg, board members, Dr. Cavazos. On June 20th, this board adopted our budget for the 2013-2014 school year. And also that same evening, we had a public hearing on the budget and the proposed tax rate. Now then, we've actually received our certified property values from the Tarrant Appraisal District, so we can set the tax rate that we need to set to support that budget. When we very first start working on the budget in the spring, we don't yet have certified values. We get some preliminary estimates from Tarrant Appraisal District. We get one set on April 30th. We get another set on May 15th. And those are the values that we use to project forward what our certified values are going to be and to project what the impact of those values will be on our budget. So now then, Tarrant Appraisal District released our certified values on July 25th, and we will use those values now to set our tax rate for the 2013 year. Our certified values for this year are a total of $20,685,053,924. These values are 4.4% higher than last year's certified values, and they're just slightly higher than what we projected the total values, the certified values would be when we were preparing this year's budget. Out of this increase, about 26% of this increase was actually new construction this year, so that's a very positive thing for our entire community, not just us. Based on the property values, based on our budgetary needs for this year, the administration is recommending that we propose or that we adopt a tax rate of 1.29217. So it's $1.29.217. This is actually a very small increase from last year's rate of about 0.9 of a penny. It's not much, but it is a slight decrease. We actually had projected when we were working on the preliminary budget and the proposed budget that our values would go up 4.2%. They've gone up 4.4%, and so we were pretty close on the total there. Now, what you see here is a very summarized slide showing the budget that you all adopted on June 20th. And you can see this is the general fund budget. And you can see that this particular budget has a surplus of about $12.5 million. Now, even though our property values, our certified values, are slightly higher than we had projected, they will not result right now in an increase in that surplus. And that's because of the impact of the properties within the tax increment finance zones, or the TIFs, that we participate in. TIFs are economic development zones, and we have 2 of them inside of our district. The way the TIFs work is the first year the TIF is formed, the property values are captured at that moment. That becomes the base year. And then going forward, we tax those properties just like we tax any other property. And we take the taxes from the growth on those values and send them into the TIF, and then the TIF uses that money for infrastructure, roads, sidewalks, what have you, sewer systems, water lines inside the TIF to encourage further economic development there, okay? And so the values in our TIF properties this year actually grew much larger than we anticipated, or much more than we anticipated. And so the net result of the revenue and then the expense that we pay in on our budget is that we don't have quite enough in our budget today to cover that TIF payment, the net effect of that TIF payment. Now, those TIF payments we expect will continue to change as appeals are filed, and so we don't actually make that TIF payment until late in the spring. We'll continue to watch those values, and then if it's necessary to amend the budget to cover that TIF payment, we will do that with our mid-year budget amendment in March. So, on the debt service side, this is where we are able to lower our tax rate. The way you figure your tax rate on debt service each year is you just start with your debt payments. Here are our bond, principal, and interest payments that we have to pay this year. And then you subtract off of that anything other than property taxes that you know you're going to receive to help you pay that, like our state facilities assistance, the interest that we get on the fund balance in that fund, the delinquent taxes that are collected, and the P&I on, or penalty and interest on those taxes. What you're left with are the taxes you've got to collect that year to pay your debt payments that year. And so then it's just a matter of looking at whatever your values are, and you calculate the rate that it takes to generate the payments or the money you need to make your principal and interest payments. So we backed into that, and for this year we are able to lower our tax rate on the debt service side by about 9/10 of a penny. Again, it's not much, but certainly we're very pleased that we are able to do that. So the next step is that we would recommend to the board that the board adopt a tax rate for the 2013-14 year, and that tax rate be a total of $29.217. Now, one thing I want to point out is we have to use some very prescribed language to make the motion, or the board does, to adopt this tax rate. State law has a set of rules called truth in taxation rules, and it requires that we publish certain information in the paper, which we did in June about our budget and proposed tax rate. It also requires that we calculate an effective tax rate. You don't publish it, but you calculate it. And then part of the comparison is you compare that effective tax rate that's computed through the T&T, or the truth in taxation requirements, back to last year's effective rate. And you have to, based on that relationship between those two rates, you have to use some very prescribed language. So for this year's tax rate that we are proposing, the language that has to be used by the board to make the motion to adopt that rate is printed up here. And that is, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of $29.217, which is effectively a 2.09% increase in the tax rate. Now, you know, we've just talked about the fact that we're lowering the tax rate, but we have to use this prescribed language that is in effect recognizing that our property values this year will generate more tax revenue than we generated last year. So it's odd. It's called truth in taxation. Sometimes when you have to use this sort of language, I'm it is very confusing, I think, to people. So I just want to point that out. That is the language you actually have to use to make the motion to adopt this rate. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Ms. Powell, you're saying that's a nice way to say don't screw up what we make the
I'm
motion
saying we
as.
need to read it just like this.
We take that very fairly. At that time, I'll take a motion. Ms. Sullins.
Just before I make the motion, I just have one clarifying question, please.
Sure.
And I see the language says, refers to, and the motion refers to property tax.
Mm-hmm.
But in the slides, there was a debt service tax rate reduction. Has that been worked through, I don't see any reduction?
Well, it is. This
Do we need
is
two motions?
the language that you see here is about the tax rate as a total, and it's made up of two parts, okay? So here are the two parts. The maintenance and operations piece is that $1.04 that we've been levying for several years, and then the debt service piece is the 25.217 cents.
Okay, good. I just needed to clarify that. So with that, I would like to make a motion. I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 1.29217, that's $1.29217, which is effectively a 2.09% increase in the tax rate.
Second.
And we have a second. We have a motion by Ms. Sullins and a second by Mr. Barron. Discussion, Mr. Pompa.
This is really confusing because we're lowering the taxes, but we're saying we're increasing taxes, so I don't understand that. Where does this wording come from?
It's state law. It's the truth in taxation requirements. You'll see notices this time of year in the paper for a number of entities, cities, counties, school districts, publishing their proposed budget notices and proposed tax rate notices. All that has to do with these truth in taxation calculations. And again, this language really speaks to the effective rate. Mm-hmm. If you look at those disclosures for cities and counties, they have to publish their effective rate. And the effective rate is a formula that looks at the taxes you actually collected last year, and it divides it by the property values this year for those properties that were also on last year's tax roll. So like if you had an organization that was tax exempt that bought a piece of property, it was on the roll last year, it's not this year, it comes on. It's a real complex thing, but it's looking at last year's actual tax collections divided by this year's values for those properties that were also taxed last year. And it calculates an effective tax rate. All right, so here's the rate that you would have to levy this year to get the same dollars you got last year, effectively. And so that's where that language comes from. It's looking at that effective rate this year compared to last year. And it's very hard to understand.
I wish we had a legislator that would fix that.
I do too.
Now, let me ask you this. When we print this in the paper, can we print last year's rate and this year's rate?
Well, we do, and we publish that notice in June. Okay, we have to publish the notice because part of what it does is it announces that public hearing that we had on June 20th. At that time, we were still looking at estimated values, and what we said to the public before we even published that notice in the paper was that we were proposing at that time a rate that was equal to last year's rate. We felt like we were going to be able to lower that debt service rate a little bit, but we didn't know for sure, so we published last year's rate. The law is that you can come along as a board and you can adopt a rate that's less than what you published, but if you wind up needing to adopt a rate that's higher than what you initially published, you have to publish that notice again and have another public hearing.
So we don't have to even publish this
No,
at all?
we've already
published.
We met the requirement in June.
This one doesn't have to be
yes.
published.
And so you'll see in the paper right now, cities and some other school districts that are now working on their budgets, and they're about to have those budget hearings. And so you'll see a lot of those notices in the paper right now.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for the great work that you do, and I wish I could say I understand this better than when I first asked my first question, but I really honestly can't say that. But what I can say is that You guys do a great job with our budget and your predictions, and we're in good shape. We don't have to go ask for more money, and so I like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pompa. And Mr. Pompa, I wish we didn't have to, we had a legislature that didn't make us publish it. We'd get more people to view it if we put it on Facebook or Twitter than going in the Star Telegram. Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Hogg. Regarding our advocacy that we do as far as legislative affairs or governance committee, what committee in the legislature would be responsible for looking at this so that we can make a lobby recommendation to them to allow us to say we move that the property tax rate be decreased, which is effectively an increase?
Right, and I think there is a Ways and Means Committee, but there is a committee that I think would oversee certainly tax rate rules and
Language
laws. So,
and-
yeah.
I think it'd either be Ways and Means or possibly maybe some subcommittee within appropriations.
Possibly,
Could possibly
yeah.
be the.
I would be interested to hear what our legislative consultants would have to say as far as the I guess, political will for that to actually occur, and maybe something that we can put into our agenda
Absolutely.
moving forward.
Right.
Great idea, Dr. Reich, and we could push to allow us to post that on our website and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever other means out there. That time, seeing no more lights, we have a motion by Ms. Solons and a second by Mr. Barron. At this time, please vote. 6 trustees present, 6 trustees voting in the affirmative. We have a tax rate. Ms. Powell. Next, we will go into discussion action item A, consider elementary classroom addition project. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. And at this time, we'd like to discuss the classroom additions that we're doing in an effort to relieve East Arlington overcrowding. And it's one part of that puzzle and that effort. So Cindy Powell will go through a presentation regarding it.
Thank you. This board, as we all remember well, in September of last year, approved a plan for new construction in East Arlington, and the objective there was to help relieve overcrowding in our elementary schools, and what I've always referred to as that East Central Arlington area. Included in that new construction plan were 3 classroom additions. And so that was approved. That plan was approved last September. A budget, as we'll see in just a minute, was approved in December for this project. We have identified that there are 3 schools that could best accommodate these classroom additions, and those are Blanton, Rankin, and Knox. And the 3 classroom additions will actually provide relief, enrollment relief, to the 7 schools you see listed here: Berry, Blanton, Crow, Knox, Rankin, Roark, and Thornton. So it's sort of the north portion of that East Central Arlington area. The board adopted a budget in December of last year, and that budget totals $13.7 million for the 3 additions. There was $10 million included in the 2009 bond package for classroom additions. That money was really initially intended to provide for 2 classroom additions, roughly. And so we adopted this plan last year. There was a 3rd school in the mix, and so that changed what we needed in terms of resources. The total here is the same. We actually had budgeted initially or presented to the board last year a budget that was $56,000 higher coming out of the old, or I'm sorry, less coming out of the old bond funds, the 99 bond funds, and $56,000 more that we would need out of the general fund surplus fund balance. Well, as we rolled along and closed out several other projects in the 99 bond funds, we had some additional surplus there that we can apply to this project, and that would require us to take $56,000 less out of the general fund surplus fund balance. So the total here is still, it's the $13,734,000 that was approved by the board a year ago. The original plan, the original scope of work for the schools is broken down as you see here. We were going to construct, we plan to construct 10 new classrooms at Blanton and at Rankin. and then enlarge the core facilities as necessary for that additional enrollment. And the core facilities included the cafeteria, the kitchen, library, et cetera. At Knox used to be a junior high school and had 2 gyms. And our initial thought was we could actually create 10 classrooms within those 2 gyms. And we saw that as a way to help control the cost of the overall project, was rather than having new construction, we would create classrooms within these gyms. What we have learned now, our architects, WA architects, have done their site investigations, and they have given us some initial cost estimates on the project. Again, that project budget was $13,734,000. The initial cost estimate for this originally planned work was $15 million. And so the original scope of work that we plan to do with these 3 schools is costing $1.3 million more than we anticipated. And the reasons why, at Knox, we talked about those gyms just a minute ago. We had these 2 gyms, and our thought was we could create 10 classrooms inside of those 2 gyms. Well, that has not been the case. We can create 6 classrooms within those 2 gyms, and so we are actually having to construct 4 new classrooms at Knox to get the total of 10 that we needed, that we were seeking. So that drove the cost up some at Knox. And then at Rankin, the library is undersized, and is significantly undersized. It's undersized for the population that the school serves now. So we are addressing that by taking in 2 adjacent classrooms to make the library larger. And so we are adding now 2 more classrooms into the new addition to replace the 2 classrooms that we're losing to the library. So these are the things that are driving the cost of the original scope of work up. Now, WRA architects and our staff have identified a couple of additional needs that we feel strongly these schools need in order to support the additional enrollment at the schools. At Blanton and Rankin, we need to provide some additional driveways and parking to accommodate drop-off and pickup times and parking at the schools. And then at Knox, there is a breezeway that we want to enclose for safety and security purposes that students would walk through to get from one part of the building to the other. These particular additional needs are estimated to cost $1,758,000. So we've got some renderings here to show you the original scope of work, and the colors don't come across real well on the wall here, but in the darker color that appears brown on here, that's expanded scope. The grayish looking color is the original scope of work that we plan to do. So at Blanton, this additional scope of work that we are asking the board to consider funding is on the north side of the building. There's drive and parking, and then additional paving through the front. This is the current driveway right here, and provide additional drive on the south side of the school around back, where there will be parking back here and a turnaround. Right now at Blanton, this does not exist at all, and parents park in the back, actually in the grass, at the end of the day to pick kids up, and there's a backlog out on Collins Street. That is a real problem, a safety concern. So we feel like that providing this additional paving, I'm sorry, going the wrong way here, will tremendously help the situation at Blanton. At Knox, the only thing we're doing is right here in the middle. This is where this breezeway is that we think needs to be enclosed. This area right here, these are the 2 gyms where we're adding classrooms. And so students will come from this existing hallway and need to walk through this breezeway to get to the new classroom addition. We feel like for safety and security reasons, we need to enclose this area, much like we did really at Lamar with that. We originally planned to have an outdoor walkway connecting the east and west hallways. We wound up enclosing that. And then just to point this out right here, these are the 4 classrooms we're actually going to have to construct. They're part of that original scope of work to get us 10 rooms, but that's where the new construction will be. Then at Rankin, much like the situation at Blanton, we needed some more driveway space to accommodate the higher enrollment, the increased traffic that will be on that campus. And so again, on the north side of the building, you see an additional drive and parking that would greatly improve traffic flow on that campus. So again, the original project budget was the $13,734,000. If the board approves the additional scope of work that we've talked about here this evening, that along with the higher cost on the initial or original scope of work would total $16.8 million. So the total project would cost $3.1 million more than we originally budgeted. And we are recommending that we go forward with this and that we look at surplus 2009 bond funds to fund this. Right now, we have a projected surplus of a little over $11 million for the projects that have been started to date. And so we feel very comfortable that we could take this $3 million additional cost out of that surplus without jeopardizing our ability to complete and deliver any of the other projects that may still be coming even in that bond program. So again, administration recommends that we proceed with the expanded scope of work and that we amend the construction fund budget for an additional $3.1 million to fully fund the original scope of work, and that we amend the general fund budget for the $621,000 that the board had already planned to take from surplus fund balance for the project. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. At this time, if any trustees have questions. Ms. Powell, while we're waiting, let me ask you a question. With our facilities audit going on right now, how do we think this will relate to that? Are we making some additions that we don't think will be in the facilities audit?
No, we actually had conversation about that today. Our consultants who will be helping facilitate or will be facilitating the Capital Needs Steering Committee are here. We were doing planning with them today. We talked about these specific projects, and we all recognize fully that we've got to add capacity in that East Arlington area. So as we begin to prepare background information for the steering committee to discuss, we will incorporate in there the additional capacity at these particular schools, and we will talk to the committee and show them that here's what we believe the new boundaries could look like. We have some very preliminary estimates or drawings that will be starting points for the boundary committee process, and we'll incorporate that information into the steering committee's background report. But I think that everybody recognizes that we've got an overcrowding situation and we've got to provide that additional capacity. So that is part of the conversation we'll be having, but we do believe that they're very much needed.
In this change at Blanton, Blanton's done really well in their scores. They've done outstanding. And I drive by every time, and that front little enclosed courtyard always gets me looking at it. It's not my favorite look. Is any of this change going to help the locked-in, closed-in courtyard?
There's nothing in this particular plan. I'm going to ask Mr. Carlisle to, for that courtyard. Is that correct? That's correct. Okay. That could be something addressed through the facility assessment. But there's nothing in this particular project for the courtyard.
Okay, that's fine. Any questions from board members? Dr. Rice. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you,
Mr.
President Hogg. Just quickly, do we have a timeline? If we approve this, when will construction start and when will the additions open?
I can tell you when the building additions will open. I'll have Mr. Carlisle tell you when the construction will actually start. The building additions are scheduled to open next August, August of 14.
Okay. And while you're coming up there, will the construction take place while kids are in school?
Yes, sir, it will. We would hope to bring a guaranteed maximum price back to the board at the November meeting, and construction would begin immediately. We have, in preparation for this, we've relocated temporary buildings and all three campuses are aware. And our construction manager will make sure that we are separated and we disturb the school activities as little as we can. But when you do a project like this, you really don't have a choice. I mean, we can't get the work done in time frame other than during school year.
Thank you.
Yeah, one comment I'll make on that too, that is something that was a big part of our evaluation when we were interviewing for construction managers and even the architects. And most of the people who have done this sort of school work, they have experience in construction projects that are going on while school's going on. So, and we've done this at Lamar, we've done it at Seguin, we did it at Arlington High School, and the construction managers do a good job at controlling that.
I just think it's a whole different story working around a high school with those mature kids. And working around an elementary school with this attractive nuisance of all the heavy equipment and the dust and the rocks, and it's just a dangerous situation, and we need to be very careful.
We will be, yes.
Mr. Barrett, I don't know which one is more unsafe. I would have to really think about that one, of who would get into construction more, high school kids or elementary students. Dr. Reich.
I don't know. That's a good question, President Hogg. Two things with the traffic and parking considerations. First off, for the additional staff that's required, was that already taken care of? This is essentially for visitor versus faculty? Is that
Well,
right?
it will be parking for the
It's all gonna be
facility as a whole,
redesigned.
and so,
Okay.
you know, yes, it will help to some degree, the
Okay.
faculty parking situation as well, especially there at Blanton.
And is there a workable plan? I mean, obviously, that's going to be the most cumbersome with drop-off and pickup if we're ripping up parking and thoroughfare. Will that timing happen maybe where that will occur over the off-season in the summer months? Or do they have a plan? Is there any coordination with the city we're going to have to do as far as allowing people to park on streets? Or
I don't think that we're really going to have any issues. At Rankin, I don't think their current situation is they drop off on the street now.
Okay.
And that will remain that way. We're talking about trying to fast track some work if we do the expanded scope at Blanton to try to get some of that south side, that driveway done earlier. But we've had good conversation about that, and I think we've got solutions to all the problems. And I'm confident that our CMs have given us the right advice. So
okay.
I think we're in good shape.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any problem with these whatsoever. It's obviously necessary, and if there's no additional questions, I'd like to make a motion so that our staff can move on with this. Well, then I would just move that we approve the allocation of the additional funds as Ms. Powell has laid out for us to get these additions moving on target.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Reich and a second by Ms. Solons. Any more discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Wait, hold on. Let's redo. Now, please vote again. Instead of me voting, I hit the button. 5 trustees present, 5 trustees voting in the affirmative. Mr. Carlisle, move forward.
We'll release the hounds tomorrow morning.
I don't know how to take that, Mr. Carlisle. I'll leave that alone. Next up, we have consideration revision, item B, consider revisions to board policy BDB local, board internal organization, internal committees. This will be, I brought this up with Ms. Solons and Mr. Hibbs supporting this. As we started going through policies and reviewing policies and assigning committees, this year one of the discussions that came about was looking online, our update hadn't been completed, and then as we found the addition of committees, we found a change, and we had changed that and hadn't been updated online, saying that the board vice president had to serve as the internal audit chair. And with that, through discussion and appointment, felt it was too limiting, and so we have changed that with belief from Ms. Solons and some discussions of that to see where we go. And so with that, we have a policy change. And the policy change is listed in there, if I can find it. Thank you. I knew I had it somewhere around here. And so the change will say, the Board Audit Advisory Committee shall be composed of 3 members of the Board of Trustees appointed by the President. At that time, we will take discussion, and then we can take a motion. Ms. Pena.
Okay, I wanted to talk about this policy change recommendation, which in reality I do not support. I want to take the names out of the positions when we discuss this. This has nothing to do with Mrs. Sullins, and it has nothing to do with Mr. Hibbs. Last year, we reviewed this policy and made the change based on a need for our board. One of the things that we wanted to do was to ensure that each of the board members had a responsibility. The responsibilities of the current officers listed in the BDA local states that the president will preside over all meetings and that the president will have the right to discuss and make motions and resolutions, vote on all matters coming before the board. And currently, without the recommended changes that are coming, you sign all contracts and documents and decide all questions of order in accordance with Robert's Rule of Order in conducting our meeting. The vice president is supposed to preside over the meetings in the absence of the president and become president only if elected into the position. That's the only responsibilities that the president has. In the 5 years that I have been on the board, the vice president has never presided over a meeting. So what is the vice president for? The vice president should have some responsibilities. We, as a board, have endorsed and supported the development of academies for our principals and our assistant principals in conjunction with our strategic plan. In essence, what we had done in doing this procedure was establish our own academy, because we are one of the best districts in the state of Texas. We never have a president become the board president when they've only served 1 year of service. We expect that our president is capable and responsible and knowledgeable enough to have the title of president. We've always done that. It's always been a great thing. So in developing our vice president, the intent was the audit committee is one of such importance. It is our only standing committee that part of the development of someone who could supposedly be next in line have that responsibility. And that is the one responsibility that really stands as vice president. Otherwise, we really don't need a vice president. The other thing was that today, with the trustees we had 3 trustees who said they did not want to be officers for whatever reason. Not that they're not capable, they certainly are, but they decided they did not want to be an officer. We have to accept that experience has to play into this, into the president of vice president, the position of vice president. Now, I know that there are exceptions to everything, and in reality, I started to rewrite this so that it allowed for that exception, and so I wrote that the Board Audit Advisory Committee shall be composed of the Vice President of the Board of Trustees, who shall act as chairperson, 3 members of the Board of Trustees that are also, and 2 other members of the Board of Trustees appointed by the President. The Board will determine annually if there will be an exception to appointment of the chairperson. Then I went back and I looked at our responsibilities on the sheet, and it already takes care of this. The policy already takes care of this. On page, on DBD local, it states that the President shall appoint members to the special committee created by the board to fulfill specific assignments unless otherwise provided by board action. So it already takes care of the exception. So we don't really need to rewrite this, but I wanted to give an either or of what direction we could go. I'm not opposed to an exception. I am opposed to us not having that follow through and providing additional or true responsibilities for the vice president of this board. Because you have to admit, President Hogg, it was a great assignment for you last year. Now, the person that you're proposing has been on that committee for 2 years, so is very well qualified. I'm not suggesting that he is not. I'm just saying that we still need to maintain the capability of training ourselves as we do with the academies. And so there's my argument against changing the policy. Actually, in reality, the new policy recommendation that's coming to change is going to remove those words and move it around a little bit, but it'll still maintain that the vice president will be the chair of that committee. But again, on DBD local, page 17, line 2, that's where it states, unless otherwise provided by board action. So we have the capability of saying it's going to happen anyway. And if this is the year we want an exception, we can still do it without revising this policy.
Thank you, Ms. Pena. Dr. Rush.
Thank you, President Hogg. I don't know, in reading this policy, the exception, I think, is only specifically to that the president of the board and the superintendent shall be ex officio members of all board committees. So I understand what you're saying, Ms. Pena, but I think there would still have to be some wordsmithing to actually satisfy the intent that you're talking about. For myself, I think the recommended change in language is fine. I have a different opinion. However, as the precedent that I've always stood firm by is having some type of data, something to drive my decision. And I would ask, do we have information on what other districts are doing that have similar structures to us? How is their language? Do they have it set where their vice president has to be the audit chair or not? And I ask that in general of this board. I know we have a TASB person that might just have a little bit of information about that. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask her to come down.
Please, by all means.
If you could come forward, that would be great. Just to know where we stand, if we're breaking precedent or not, or if we're catching up with the times, so to speak.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Jen Cooper. I'll be presenting a little bit more thoroughly here in a moment.
Yeah.
In terms of this is really one of those great examples of things that maybe aren't policy to begin with. So the answer to your question is that most districts don't have standing committees in their policy. Do they have standing committees? Probably, yeah. But they're not necessarily, you're not limiting yourself by policy to, that a certain person would have to be the chair of that, So those are things that you take care of internally by board
even
action
as the audit,
on a case-by-case basis.
Even the audit committee is not typically in, like, for TASB policies that you've seen, is not listed in
Not
policy?
typically. Anybody who has that in their policy,
Interesting.
it's a unique
Okay.
addition to the district, which isn't to say, I don't know off the top of my head how many districts might actually have that.
Yeah.
I can say of the ones that I can think of that have any kind of standing committees or any kind of a committee structure outside of just the basic policy language, which is what you were reading a moment ago, that the board can put together committees and that, they can say who's going to be the chair by majority action of the board, which is true for most things. So the ones that do have it probably would actually either call the vice president or the vice president working in conjunction with an administrator in the district. So.
Okay, well, that's very interesting information.
But,
I appreciate it.
that's something that I could go back and give you more numbers. I could give you
That's right.
for that, but the vast majority would not have that information in policy at all.
Okay, I definitely appreciate that. So,
Sure.
and I would think then that maybe your recommendations going forward, probably something about this policy that we need to change it or eliminate it, but we don't have to talk about that right now.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So, in closing, for myself, then I wouldn't have a problem leaving the language the way it is, striking it completely as what Ms. Cooper is just discussing. And to speak to Ms. Pena's succession planning, developmental type things for the board, I do think that there are things that we will continue to address and improve on as a board to be more efficient, to be more effective for succession planning, leadership capacity building, that type of thing. I don't know that saying that the VP being in charge of audit lends itself solely as the thing to do for that. I think we have to develop something more, which I believe we're going to be doing in recent months or in coming months. So I don't know that I would subscribe to that as much. So with that, I'm fine with the proposed language or even just striking it because it seems like maybe it's not necessary at all.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Ms. Pena. Oh, sorry, your button was pushed.
I was so intently listening to what he was saying. You know, they say that's a sign of a good listener. You don't even remember what it was you were thinking about because you're listening so hard. Anyway, what I wanted to say was, actually, you know, I am a TASB director, but I went to the CRSS training, and they told us that most districts do have a standing audit committee. And they didn't say an officer necessarily appoint an officer, but they said most districts do have the standing audit committee. I don't know about that part. Yeah, I don't know about that part. I can't remember if he said it. I know he said it several times that each district has a standing audit committee. But of course, this, you know, we know who the trainer is there, and he finally started saying that the internal auditor was our employee, so that was a first as well. I just want to make sure that we have this line. It's not, and again, it's not about the persons.
Oh, agree.
You know, it definitely is not about the person. I think everybody on this board, the way it stands right now, everyone is qualified. We all have enough experience. We've been working together long enough. But the point is, when we set policy, it's not for today's board. This is for the future boards. And so we have to make sure that it is in conjunction with what we want to make sure is in place for the advancement of the district. And that's where I'm coming from.
Ms. Solons.
Thank you, President Hogg. I'm not sure, since we have this policy review coming up, you know, what the appropriate action is this evening, but just weighing in on the audit committee and leadership capacity, I would agree with you, Dr. Reich, that the audit participation is one important component, but it is only one component, and it's an essential component. And I agree with you, Ms. Pena, on that. But sometimes over the course of time, any trustee may have served on the audit committee or may have professional background in in a particular area, and other important areas like student performance, governance, and those types of things also are weigh heavily with me in the experience leadership capacity. So I think that we are closer than we think on this. My only question, I guess, to you, President Hogg, is this a necessary action this evening, given the upcoming policy changes that are likely with the update we're going through?
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Solons. I'll answer your question in just a second. Let me give you the reasoning. Ms. Pena, I agree. We need training, those type of things for the academy. I would tell you on the reverse side, when I became vice president of this board, I was automatically placed in that audit chair, and I'd never served on the audit committee. So I think that was counterproductive training, because then I was chair of a committee that I'd never served on before, when I think other people would have been a better serve as a chair right when I learned that. And I learned quickly what needed to occur on the audit, and that's when we actually changed this. This change came through because we had it just as a procedure, and we made the change as a board, so this is a recent change. And I've always been taught policies are to guide you, not to limit you. And if you read through in the earlier policy, and I apologize I don't have it, it talks about the president of the board appoints all people to all the committees and the chairs, and then this one comes back and says, well, here's what you have to do. So they kind of counterproductive on that. So my thought process is if we do want to have the chair of the vice president as chair, that could be a procedure in our board handbook, but I don't think it needs to be a policy. And that is why this change came about, because when we were going through appointments, and you're right, Ms. Pena, it's for future boards. We're clicking really well up here, but we're preparing for that, hopefully not the way, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road, if the policy hadn't been changed, which it probably won't be at that point. It doesn't get to that policy much. I think it is a limiting piece of there, and it needs to have that broader spectrum of 3 members, because I do think it allows that to be able to place people in the right roles from where they need to be in that position. So that's why I made this recommendation and change with some discussion. And Ms. Solons, what was your, to make sure I get to it?
Given that the policy
Yes,
changes.
and I would tell you, when I reviewed the policy change that Ms. Cooper made, and she kind of left that piece in there because she thought it was something the board was looking at. And so that's why we brought this up before we even reviewed that. Now, as the committee goes through and reviews that, if we need to make another change, by all means. And I'll tell you, I was a little baffled the first time, and timing couldn't have been better by Dr. Cavazos and Ms. Cooper, because I went online and looked up our policy, and it didn't have this verbiage in there in the policy, but we knew Mr. Edwards, our audit chair, had said, hey, we did make this change. I said, we need to find that information out. And so I would say it is important that we make this policy change, because for the audit chair to officially run his audit meetings, we need to be able to have the correct policy in place. Ms. Pena.
I just wanted to know, make sure I heard you right. I mean, my interpretation of the overall committee assignment said, unless other provided by board action. And I thought I heard you say that even if it's there, we can say by board action, this is an exception.
Yes.
So we don't really need to change that. We can just make it an exception by our board action.
I'm not sure I fully understand. Do you mean that if you have in your policy that the vice president is the chair, that the board could, by action, make an exception to that?
Yes.
Yeah. You could. I would begin to ask, though, why we would have the, because I tend to agree that less is more when it comes to policy. So if we're going to be able to accept that, then is the reason for having it there in the first place just to set some sort of a standard that would normally be the person. But then it's kind of like saying, well, we want it to be this way, but we can always accept it. But, well, does it need to be in policy at all? Take it out. That would be, that would just be TASB's generalized recommendation for policy language, where it's not required and where you would possibly accept it. Don't put it in there.
So we'll change the recommended, if we accept this, then we're going to change already your document.
Right, and I'll dive a little bit more into sort of the nature of what you have in front of you, the giant document of policy reviews when that comes up. But yes, those are, none of those are having any action on them tonight. They still need to go through a committee review, and there may be several changes to some of those documents. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. At this time, I'll make a motion to accept the policy change as written on your handouts, to say, striking the vice president of the board of trustees who shall act as chairperson, and 2 other, to adding the word 3 members of the board of trustees appointed by the president.
Second.
We have a motion by myself and a second from Ms. Solons. Any more discussion? Seeing none, please vote. I'm having to count to make sure. 5. 5 trustees present, 4 voting in the affirmative, 1 against with Ms. Pena. The policy's changed. Thank you. Next on the agenda is items to be drawn from the consent agenda. Are there any items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to considering items listed on your consent agenda. Ms. Powell.
Wait, Mike. I didn't hear it. You had your mic off.
I apologize for that. Microphone wasn't on. Next is items to be withdrawn from consent agenda. Do we have any consent agendas? What? Oh, Spence. Yeah, our speaker above. Sorry, Spence, everyone in the room can usually hear me. I'm loud enough as it is. So, are there any items to be withdrawn from consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Ms. Powell, do we have any donations and bids this evening?
We have bids. We do not have donations.
Perfect.
The secretaries and bookkeepers have just come back on duty in the last week, and so we don't have new reports from them yet to share with you. We do have 2 bids, though, on the agenda this evening, and in both cases, the administration recommends the lowest bids meeting specs and the bids representing the best value to the district.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Pena and a second by Dr. Reich. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 5 trustees present, by 5 trustees voting in the affirmative. Next, we'll move on to discussion items. At this time, I think we'll have the same speaker come up, and we'll throw it over to overview of TASB policy review and Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. And we've gone through a process with Jen Cooper from TASB as a consultant to review our policies and make sure that the policies are up to date and have been reviewed for the most recent updates. And so she's done work with our staff over a period of time this summer to get those policies in line. And so she has a brief presentation. Jen.
Great. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure working with everyone in your district. This summer I came in and visited for 3 long days. I think it's felt like 30 days, but, really, I mean, imagine sitting down for, well, I thought it was, easy, of course, but for sitting down for, 6 to 8 hours at a stretch and talking policy and all the details in that have resulted in the what you have in front of you. It's a lot of work, but your staff is very committed and, they're, very intelligent, very easy to work with, so they made it not too hard on me, and I tried to make it not too hard on them. So what I'm here to do tonight, first of all, I met at 4 o'clock with the subcommittee that'll be working with these policies more specifically, and we just sort of basically made up a game plan. So for you tonight, what I'd like to do is just present a little overview of what we've done so far. What you have in front of you. I'd like to give you sort of a map or a key for which to sort of use when you begin to dive into those policy changes you have in front of you. And then tell you what the plan is going forward, and then of course take any questions that you have. So basically here we're just going to gain that shared understanding of the policy theory and practice, which is important. We've already started to talk about it without me even coming up here, what actually belongs in the policy manual as opposed to other forms of board action. That's part of what we'll discuss. We'll get on the same page regarding the recommendations. In other words, what kind of generalized types of recommendations I'm making, so when you look at it, you'll have that sort of in the back of your head. Hopefully you'll remember. And then we're going to set a timeline for completing it so that we can get it done in a timely fashion, and you can have faith that that board policy manual that you have is the standard for policy in your district on which your administrative staff is going to implement through administrative regulations. So when we talk about policy, of course, we talk about all the pieces because people just throw the word policy around. What's your policy on that? Well, policy really, in sort of a broad sense, consists of the law, board action, and board action comes in many forms, as we'll discuss, and administrative regulations. And so we're really going to focus in on very quickly just what belongs in the board policy manual. That's my sort of the scope of my work with the district. And, if you've seen that board policy manual, it's very large, and, probably 75% or more of it is, in fact, just legal policy. It's stuff that you'd love to change, but you can't. It's given to you by the federal government or the great state of Texas. So when we talk about board action, the board action piece of that is actually just a sliver of all the board action that occurs here. There's budget, curriculum, the goals of your district and campus improvement plans. Staffing decisions, I saw that tonight. I was really just kind of charmed by how much lavish attention you gave to your appointments this evening. That was really nice. Board resolutions are, of course, another form of board action. And then there's any action on the agenda, such as what you were doing a moment ago with your change to BDB, which I have noted, don't worry. And then, of course, there's local policy. And so local policy, when we talk about these, some of the scope of the recommendations is pretty wide. It's pretty large. And that's because some of those things we believe belong in some other, potentially some other form of board action and not necessarily the policy manual. So when we talk about what is specifically needed in that piece, that sort, this form of board action that goes on policy online, we talk about just a few different kinds of policies. In some cases, the district is required by law to adopt a policy. This was kind of the funny case of the, it's not very funny actually, of the end of course exams. I call it funny because that legitimizes so much of my work last year. But yeah, in fact, it was, it was a lot. You were required to have this statement that was sort of vacuous by nature. When required by law, we're going to do what we're supposed to do as required by law. All right. So when you're required to have a policy, well, you have a policy. CQ Local is an example of that. That's for technology resources. Sometimes prudence requires that you have a policy, particularly in a large district where we have something when a student, is going to claim that they are being bullied or discriminated against or in some other way harassed, then you want to make sure that there's a really consistent way that the district is going to handle that from campus to campus, department to department. And so you put some really broad guidelines and policies. So freedom from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, FFH, this is one of those. It's not actually required by law, but we, because there are a lot of legal ramifications and implications, we recommend the policy. Then you have times when the law is permissive on a topic that the board needs to make a choice about. When you look at EI Local, that is certificates of coursework completion, where the law says the district may offer those to students if they've completed all district requirements but not met the state testing requirements. Then, because it is our conservative opinion that the district should not case-by-case decision make when it comes to that kind of thing, we recommend that you put that, whether you will or will not do it, shall or shall not, in your policy. And then finally, there are times when you want to sort of set a threshold, the board's sort of comfort level with how much responsibility to hand over to the superintendent and his administrative staff. And you will put that in policy. In this case, you're going to set a threshold for purchasing, which you have in your policy. So these are the reasons why we might have something in policy. Outside of these reasons, in TASB, we tend to really scrutinize why something's in policy if it doesn't need to be there, because usually you're going to find it in another form of board action or in your administrative regulations. And so when you see some deletions, then you really think about, does it fall into one of those categories where it's needed to be here? And if not, what's it doing here? What's its function here? Are the people who need this information informed by it being here, and so forth? So I want to briefly talk about policy versions, because this is going to be helpful when you look at sort of the policy, what I like to call the anatomy of the policy. When you look at any particular policy, at the very bottom you see these notes on it, and it tells you kind of a lot of stuff, even though you might not really understand it. But at the bottom, the date issued, all that tells you is when it was sort of hot off the TASB press, when we released it. So that's more for our information. Right below that, if it says update, that means it's something that we recommended to you at an update, meaning that the last change made to that policy was made probably in response to some change in law. Right below that, you'll see the policy code, and then you'll see some sort of a letter or number combination, an A, a B, a C25, or an X, something like that. If you see anything except for an X, what you're going to know actually is that that policy is a policy that is standard text. There's nothing unique in that policy. You and maybe 500 or 700 other districts have that exact same wording. So this is important to know when you look at the policy changes, because for a couple of things. If you are considering a policy change to something that says A, well, you might want to call us because we might have a B version of that same policy. In this case, it's where the law is permissive. We've written a policy that really encompasses both of those things. So keep that in mind. It's also good to know that when you see that X down at the bottom, what that means is that there's something in the policy that's unique to your district. And that may or may not be something that is needed to be there. In some cases, it's really important information about your district that needs to be there. There are some policy codes where every district in the state has an X or unique policy. Class rank, leaves and absences, these are 2 examples. All X, we call them, all unique. So keep that in mind because we really scrutinize those as well. Every time you have an update, we have to really look at what is unique in that particular policy in order to make a recommendation to you because it may, our standard recommendation isn't going to work for you. We need to really scrutinize your unique language. For that reason, it's more costly. And so if that, if that unique language is not necessary or required, we'll often say, is it worth it? Is it worth the extra money to change that one word or whatever? So keep that in mind as you're going through with your red pen. Don't mark it up. And we're all, we spend a great deal of time, I guess it's sort of what districts pay us to do, arguing over what word ought to be there and changing the verbiage. So we've already gone through all that for you. Another really, yeah, exactly. As it turns out, I'm a former English teacher, so it comes naturally to me, don't worry. So when we talk about, and there's this summary document, which you've probably already seen, that's the one that gives you these little blurbs about what's changing in the policy. When it talks about this information is better suited to administrative regulations, that might make you feel a little bit uncertain about what do I mean? If you take it out of policy, where's it going to go? Well, this is a really great example of one place where that information is probably better suited. In this case, it's your high school course description handbook. So when we talk about information, you may have a general statement about, well, we as a district will have grading guidelines that will allow students to make up work or to redo work. That's the really broad mandate that the board says we want to allow students to have that opportunity. And then you push the details of that out to the administrative staff, and they're going to convey it to the people who need to know it, which is the students and the parents, right? In a document like this, your students and your parents may be savvy enough to go on Policy Online, but this is probably where they're actually going to look for that information. And so this is where it needs to be. So regulations, guidelines, plans, these are based on district policy, but they're left to administrative discretion and design and implementation. Your student handbooks are administrative regulations. Your employee handbook are administrative regulations, meaning they're not adopted. Grading guidelines, transportation manuals, things of this nature. Not, notice, your student code of conduct. Your student code of conduct is required by law that you adopt that. It's an extension of your board policy. So there's that. These may cite or reference policy, but they include details that are necessary for those day-to-day operations. So again, we've been talking that sort of coinciding with this big policy audit to sort of get the policy manual, bring it back to relevance in the district, is, okay, where will we store, where will we house our administrative regulations? And so I've pulled this up as just an example. This doesn't currently exist in the district, but it's an example of one way to do it, which is to sort of compile them house them online in an intranet. So this is something that district administrators and the board could access for review or for use. And it keeps them all together. This particular district that has this, they are using the policy coding structure that you find in Policy Online. But you don't necessarily have to. You can name them something that's more obvious, such as credit by examination regulation or something that is a little bit more transparent. But if you do it this way, of course, you can look it up by code or by name, either way. So it's an example. There's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. Some districts do choose to put their regulations and exhibits on Policy Online. I always tell districts this. It looks really cool. But then I always immediately say, you probably don't want to do that because that means every single administrative regulation comes through us, which means it costs money, which means it can take as long as it takes us sometimes to get things online. Because, of course, the Policy Online is not an official document. It's a convenience thing. It's just so that your district can have that transparency out into the community. It's not official in any way. You still have to have your one official manual. So anyway, some districts do this, but again, it's probably wiser to think about something that looks more like this. That way, you can do it in-house. We do have models that, we've been talking a little bit about how do you keep these things updated. Well, we do it for you if you're using the TASB models. We, every year, are updating the student handbook. There's going to be a massive update to the student handbook coming with House Bill 5 implementations next year. And we translated into Spanish, so pretty awesome. So of course it maintains the coding structure, and it has a lot of information for the people who develop the handbooks in your district. We have a model student code of conduct that's generally updated every 2 years along with changes to legislation because it's driven by legislation. Last year we actually had to update it twice, so, but that's pretty unusual. Not last year, but we did it another time. But it's always updated after a legislative session. And then we have the Regulations Resource Manual. This is, again, something that with changes in law, with changes in policy, we're updating our models. And so there's just a lot of resources for keeping those administrative regulations updated. All right, so just moving really quickly into the review itself. How this all originated is, of course, I was talking to Dr. Cavazos, and we knew it's time. Every district we recommend audits does a thorough audit of policy at least every 10 years is a good target, but even more frequently than that sometimes. And so we knew it was time to get that done and that it was going to be a pretty big undertaking. And, and he just said, what, let's do it. So we came and we buckled down and I sent out a questionnaire, and the questionnaire was sent back to me. And based upon the answers to those, so questions such as who has final authority for hiring administrative staff, or, so district practice questions. And I used that to do the audit. And then I used what you had online and did some comparisons, just kind of some spitball drafts, and then we just went over it. And my sort of charge to the the cabinet was, we're going to look at this and say, okay, is this what we're doing? If it's not, do we need to change the policy, or do we need to change the practice? Which of these two things need to, or a little bit of both in some cases. And I took copious notes and then went back to my, my pen in TASB where they keep me. And yeah, we all just sort of sit there with our heads down and our, headsets on. And I drew up this massive document that you now have in your hands, and that's based upon what we believe to be the best recommendations for policy that's going to, on the one hand, give those broad mandates and keep those intact for the board, while at the same time just kind of making sure that things are accurate, that they're in compliance with current laws and so forth, but also removing things that are outdated, removing things that are better suited to administrative regulations. So you'll have two different documents. One is the summary of explanation, and that's the one that you really is going to give you that real quick blurb about what's changing in the policy. And it is a quick blurb. If I explained everything in detail, you'd have a novel on your hands, and we don't. So it'll say something very brief like, this information is better suited to administrative regulations, or this information is no longer accurate, or this information has been moved to another code, or so forth and so on. It might tell you that it was actually information previously recommended to you at a previous update, but not yet having action on it. In which case, if you want more details about that, you'll have to look at the update materials from that time. So I've tried to be as explicit as possible without giving you too much information. And then the secondary document is the actual policies themselves annotated to show you the changes. So that's what you have. And of course, there are deletions, there are additions, there are revisions. In some cases, you were missing policies that we recommend. In some cases, you had policies that we no longer recommend. And then lots and lots of revisions to current policies. So where we go from here, this is the thing. The committee now, we've sort of really discussed some of the policies. We've begun to dig into them. And so I've sort of said, well, it's a good idea to get this, to really dig into it in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The reason for that are a couple, but basically Update 98 is coming up. Update 98 is going to be big. It's going to be very big, and that's, of course, because of all the legislative changes that have recently occurred and that are taking effect the beginning of this school year. I'll tell you, when you get Update 98 in your hands, you're going to potentially be overwhelmed with that information, but just remember that the legal policies, and it's primarily legal policies, are their law. It's really good for you to understand the legal context, read your vantage points, but you really need to focus in quickly just on the local policies, because you can't change legal, you don't adopt them. They're just going to end up going online. So focus your time and energy on those local policies. And that way you can take action as quickly as possible on it. But we need to get these policy review updates, we need to get those moving forward before Update 98 comes out. Otherwise, we have to rewrite the summary, and it sort of pushes it back further, makes the project more costly and so forth. So my recommendation is that your committee, your subcommittee of the board, look at the policy recommendations that I've had over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Go through them, with as much of a fine-tooth comb as you feel, inclined to do. Call me up, email me, work with the administrative staff if changes are needed. And so that when they bring it back to the board as a whole on the 9th of September, the recommendation is going to be, it'll probably look a little different than what you have in your hands right now, because I'm assuming that they're going to ask that I make some additional changes to that document. They're going to recommend that the board take action to authorize me to make the changes. So you're not formally adopting anything even at that point. The reason why is I need authorization from you guys to make those changes. But when everything is complete, you're actually going to have a brand new manual. So there's going to be a formal, rescinding the old one and adopting the new one. What that means is you're not only adopting these policy changes in your hand, you're re-adopting any of the old policies that aren't actually changing. So you get a full manual to adopt at that time. But after I've been authorized on the 5th, hopefully, to make the changes, I'll do that, and I'll get that going. It takes a while, of course, but hopefully you'll have the manual in your hand to adopt so that when 98 comes right behind it, you're starting fresh. That's the ideal scenario here. And so I do hope that as you're looking through it, if you have any questions at all, that you either go through your administrative staff to talk to me about it, call me up and ask me. I'm always, of course, we're the Association of School Boards, so of course we do talk to school board members. So do call me. Ideally, you're going to have that brand new policy manual in your hand by your October 3rd board meeting. And then right behind that is going to come 98, so that at the beginning of the next semester, you have a fresh policy manual sort of governing the district. So what questions do you have for me? It's a lot of information in a really quick time, so what...
Ms. Cooper, I have never met someone who made policies actually somewhat exciting. So more than you.
I'm a Vulcan. Mind meld. Yeah.
You definitely you love policies, and we can see that. At this time, I pass it over to Mr. Barron as our committee chair for the governance committee, who I know met with you, and see where the committee's looking to guide this.
Well, I agree. We deal with a lot of really smart people around here, and boy, I tell you what. Your grasp of the whole policy situation is just incredible. We're very happy with your work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And our plan is very much like Ms. Cooper explained. The committee is going to meet in the next 2 weeks, and we'll come back prior to September 5th. If there's anything that we need to hash out as a board, then we'll put that on the agenda specifically for that meeting. Otherwise, we'll put the whole package on there for the meeting to approve. There are quite a few policies that will be deleted, some that will be added, a great number that are being changed or updated. But we have to get it done before policy update 98 comes out, or else we're starting all over again.
Absolutely, or at least you're, sidetracking, which I actually said today. If there are any policies that are really causing some, consternation or debate, we just simply take those out. Don't hold up the whole process, for those. But if it's BDB continuing, to have discussions about that, or if it's any other policy that you are, that concerns a majority of the board, then just pull them out and authorize me to make every change except for, which actually you see on that summary document. There's a place to check off whether or not you authorize the change for every single policy. So you would just put no in that case for any of the ones that you're not prepared yet to authorize a change to.
Anything else, Mr.
We're
Barron?
good. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Pena.
My question is actually to Mr. Barron as the chair of the committee, and since I'm a committee member, Mr. Barron, how would you like to handle misspelled words? Misspelled words. I mean, they're not really against the policy, but they're misspelled in the book.
No.
I already found one, so I was just flipping through, and I said, oh, that's misspelled. So how do you, those are no big deal really, but they should be correct since this is a school district.
And not to interject where I shouldn't, but when these actually are processed, we have editors. Yeah, so that's their job. They'll go through, and if I've misspelled something, and sometimes we have those ones that they're actually both words, but you just used the wrong one. Then
And actually, it's not on one you recommended changes on.
Okay.
It was an existing one.
Oh, that's good to know, but they'll go through every single policy.
Okay.
Yeah. But anytime you find that, I can actually change that real fast. Just let me know. Yeah.
All right.
But I'm glad it's not one I recommended.
Ms. Payne, you almost gave the former English teacher a heart attack out here.
Well, that's why I thought I'd tell you.
Oh, no. I'm reliant on spell check as everybody else around here. It's true. Yeah.
With that, this is, go ahead, Dr. Reich.
I just want to understand the process a little bit more. Will we have this, when the committee's concluded your work, will you send us an electronic link or something before that September 5th meeting so that we can review? How are we going to do that review beforehand?
You're going to leave here tonight with one of these binders that's got all the recommended changes on it. We cannot send you our recommended changes because that would violate TOMA, but we will notify Mr. Hogg to put them on the agenda, and we'll discuss them at the next meeting.
Yeah, Mr. Barron, I think where Dr. Reich is going is, I think as you guys, as the committee talked about, I think y'all are going to flag items that you think we need to bring them out. And I think with each of us having, and Ms. Cooper, I would please welcome your advice on the best way to do this. As we, and Dr. Reich, tell me if this is where you think we need to go. Any items that have been flagged that we need to discuss, I would just say we send out those with the board agendas, the board packets, so we know which ones before the 5th. Policy ABC, or whatever it is. I mean, is that where you're kind of looking, Dr. Reich, to go with this?
I think we're saying the same things. I mean, whenever we have a proposed policy amendment come before us, it is something that comes to us in our board packets beforehand. So I just assumed that this would be the same thing. I was just clarifying that is the case, but now I'm confused with Mr. Barron's response.
Well, you want to go ahead? Yeah, and I think you currently have all the policy recommendations in your hand. If at any point they want us to change one of them, it's fine for us to just swap it out in your packet. That would not be a violation. Maybe you were going to say something similar.
I was just going to say, I think there's nothing wrong with everybody having what the committee is looking at now. Right. I don't think there's anything wrong with the committee as you're making proposed changes, sending those out to everybody. Yeah. What can't happen
is us dialogue back.
Lots of discussion and emails or phone calls or meetings or anything where you're further discussing that before you get to that board meeting. But I think studying it for everybody is fine.
Okay.
I think the committee could send out, here's the ones we're looking to change.
Yeah.
And as Ms. Cooper's document, it's very easy to read from what she changed, what she's recommended changes. It couldn't have been put together in an easier way. And I think as the committee pulls and flags those items, if there's changes, I think if we can, try and get that out to the board before.
Yeah.
You're saying, so if there's 20 items that are flagged,
yeah,
we're looking for a change. If you can say, hey, here's what you're looking to change, just to speed up the meeting, I think is where you're going.
Absolutely.
That's fair.
Yeah,
if the committee thinks that's, okay.
Yeah, so potentially they could just be given to you in a packet so that you could just swap them out of your binder or something like that. They could potentially be Xeroxed in a different color, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Perfect. Ms. Pena, you were.
Yes, in the packet, there's a policy review session summary. And in that, it tells all the policies and whether we accept them or not. What we could do is send, if there's some that are not, we're recommending not be accepted, notify the rest of the board. We're recommending as a committee that these not be accepted. There's where you find that there's a problem. Meanwhile, if you're looking at the document and you see something you think we shouldn't be accepting and you notice that's not on our list, then it becomes an issue that also should be presented during our discussions at the next meeting. Is that fair?
I don't know if it covers situations where you might accept a change with some minor changes in addition to that recommended change. So.
But wouldn't that be we weren't accepting it? I mean, anything that we change is not accepting it as presented.
I don't know how absolute the yes and no is. So
That's actually a good question, yeah.
Yeah.
In that particular case, you would put yes with, with adjustments or something and attach your adjustments. I would, definitely just hesitate to say don't red pin them too badly because, again, there's,
Yeah.
unless it's necessary language
Yeah.
because, I'd want to be able to
And
work
if
with
it's
that
okay
language.
with Mr. Barron, we can provide even those, yes,
Mhm.
with exception.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that way we can do our homework, we come here ready to go, and we can just be done.
Yeah, I think, that's why I think this summary is so great,
Mhm.
because we can do that, and everybody will know what we're referring to.
Thank you.
Ms. Cooper, it's very apparent you've done this many a time, so you definitely know your policy. With that, this is a discussion item, so I think we have the guidance of where we want the committee to go and where we'll be going.
Great, thank you so
Ms.
much.
Cooper, thank you for all your work on
Yeah.
this, and thank you for helping. We always have to go through and clean up things, and right now it's cleaning up some policies. So
Absolutely.
we ask schools to look at many of things, so we're looking at our own self and saying, let's make sure everything's up, running as smoothly as possible. Thank you for all your help to this district.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Next, we have open forum for non-agenda items. I do not have any cards, so we will move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. And I'd just like to share that a couple of items. And last week we had LLT training, Leaders Learning Together. We had principals, assistant principals, all assistant principals, and district administrators. Over 3 days, we learned more about curriculum audit results, instructional model, facilities assessment, finance, human resources, discipline updates, tutor training. It was really an important time for our leadership staff to come together to learn together, in essence. And I want to thank the presenters, the area superintendents, the directors, et cetera, who presented during that session. Took a lot of time and effort in preparation, and I think it was well worth the investment. Also, our new teachers have been to the PDC this week to learn more about the district and learn more about the curriculum and our expectations and our standards. And we had the opportunity to visit with them, and they're certainly excited to have joined the AISD, and we're excited for them and wish them much success this year. Also, the Elks Lodge number 2114 donated dictionaries for third graders or third grade students at 11 of our schools of AISD elementaries. And last night, they invited us to attend to accept their donation. And so I would just want to publicly thank them for their work. And if you recognize one of those individuals, maybe more than one, but one of the Elks members is Eddie, our chef, and he took a big part in that. And so I want to thank them publicly. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Wonderful job in the district, as always. Next, we have school board reports. Are there any school board reports? Ms. Pena.
Well, I was surprised that our superintendent did not include his wonderful, absolutely fantastic presentation at the State of the District conference that we had. We had received nothing but compliments. He just did an incredible presentation to let the community know just where we are, the direction we're going, how everything is data-driven, so a comparison of where we were and where we are today. And it's amazing at the speed at which we've moved to implement the strategic plan. I'm very proud of you. I've heard nothing but good things about the direction that the AISD is going now. The other event that I went to was the new teachers orientation, and that's about it. I think that's enough. I think I attended everything except the Elks Lodge event that you were at. That's my report.
Thank you, Ms. Pena. Mr. Barron.
Thank you, President Hogg. A couple things. One was what Mrs. Pena just mentioned, which was new teacher orientation. We had 415-ish brand new teachers come in, and it was just extraordinary to see all those new teachers. Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Youngsters and mature people. It was great. I'm so proud of our district. That was a great job. And the state of the district was awesome, too. Staff did a fabulous job, as always. They're not paying attention. Oh, there they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Always fun to make sure people are paying attention at 10:10. It's always a hard thing. With that, seeing no more lights, Mr. Secretary, do we have any items to address?
None.
With that, the board is adjourned at 10:08 p.m.